Well, welcome everyone to today's podcast. I am super excited to be here with you, and I have an amazing guest for you today. Karen, welcome to the podcast.
Andrea, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here with your listeners today, and hopefully I share something that they find valuable. Eh,
Well, you will. I know you will, because we have spoken before. That is why I invited you here. So before we start, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, right now I'm the employee experience lead for global markets at Citi. I have been in that role for about 2 years, but been at the bank for about 5 years. And in the bank, I've held 7 roles in those 5 years. And people look at me and go, wow, you've had 7 different roles in 5 years. Yep. And it's just a testament of who I am as a person. But one of those roles, I know this is the engineer whisperer, is or still is, you never stop being an engineer, is as a process engineer.
Yes, as I say, you can take the engineer out of the engineer.
Your mind never changes, unfortunately, or fortunately, thank God.
No, I think it's fortunate. There's some really good things that engineers learn about themselves, and bringing those to bring value to others, it's important. Well, let's jump right in. I invited you here today because I'm curious, what was the most challenging transition that you went through in your career?
Um, well, maybe I should add, for everybody who does not know me, that I have ADHD. And so I am neurodivergent, and that means that your t-shirt that you're wearing is very true. So I do live life differently, and that's because I have a mind of a different kind, right? So being who I am in a huge corporate setting like Citi was probably one of my most challenging career moves in my life, because I went from a small corporation where we had 49 odd employees with a short stint at Amazon, and then over to Citi, which has 250,000 plus people working there. That was quite a change for me, especially someone who thinks completely off, what people think is not normal, right? So it was very intimidating, meeting lots and lots of people, trying to keep up with the names, just extremely, do I show who I am? Can I be authentic? Will it be accepted? Really and truly in a smaller setting, you can be very authentic, but in Citi, there's, in a larger corporation, there's opportunity for people to misunderstand you. And so that was really hard for me.
So how did you work through the challenges that you were facing as a female with someone who's thinking differently in a large corporate setting?
Well, uh, first of all, it meant that I had to be um, authentic with the people I worked with and share with them my vulnerability. So my inability to be what they considered normal or neurotypical. And you know, sometimes they would say things like, don't interrupt, or you're interrupting me. And eventually I had to explain to people one-on-one why that was and why it actually happened. And that was how I started off finding my footing in that large corporation.
Ah, and what was something that came easy to you, if anything?
Being humanistic. But because I was what people would consider, different, right, than the norm. I think I'm normal, but other people think I'm a little bit different. Um, I had to be very empathetic to others and very humanistic with others, and that's something, that and very transparent. And sometimes in the corporate setting, people don't find it comfortable being so transparent. Sometimes they have to hold back something, that they can't be who they are.
So Karyn, you're saying that before you were understood, you had to understand others
Of
to
course.
extend that empathy before you have received it.
Exactly. And lots of one-on-one coffee chats had to happen, right? So before I went into a huge setting to present or to meet people in a large meeting, I would try and meet people in a smaller setting first, so they knew who I was before, they made assumptions in a large meeting setting.
Well, I wanted to ask you how you did that, and you answered that question. As I'm sure people are thinking, well, how did you do that? So that how do I do that? So you took advantage of of those connection meetings that I call, where you showed up first, let yourself seen, and then you got curious about others.
And Andrea, I do that today still. When I know I have to meet somebody who's either a senior or junior and that they don't really know the work that I do or know the person that I am, I do set up a very like short meet and greet or introduction sessions or coffee chats. And I start off the conversation by saying, I really appreciate you making time to meet with me, but I do need to tell you that I'm neurodivergent, and I want you to know that everything I do is with kindness and for the best of the business and the corporation. And I may be coming across bluntly, or you might think that I'm too direct. But I just want to make sure you know that it's not meant to be that way. And it just is and usually they say, oh my gosh, I don't find you to be too direct. We've interacted by email, and but the minute I tell them, they they offer grace to me, and that really means a lot to me.
Thank you for sharing that, because we hear that a lot, to come forward, create boundaries, set expectations. We don't know how you do that. So you demystified that and simplified it down to the just say what people will think about you anyways, and say what the truth is, so that you can almost like put the elephant on the table and have a conversation about it. Now I'm
Exactly.
curious, and curious, you can choose to answer or decline, because I don't want to what's the word, I don't want to bring others in who we didn't ask their permission. But how did people respond to that, where you put that on the table? um do people open up themselves and maybe put their elephants on the table? Y- you know
And everybody reacts differently. So I've had reactions across the board, whereas because neurodiversity is very different and very individually identified. Somebody might say, well, I have a son that's autistic and they expect me to act like them, but you don't act like them. And so then I have to go on and explain that, it really is, everybody's an individual and it presents differently. And no two people with neurodiversity are exactly the same. And so that would have been a negative reaction. And then I send them a bunch of here, here's some general reading, but some of them appreciate it because they've learned something, right? And then others are very embracing and share about themselves and share what they're going through. And, then we become almost friends before we become colleagues, right? And that
yes.
that makes it so much easier that they're willing to be authentic and to share. Um, it just really depends. It's also different culturally, Andrea. So I'll tell you, if it was quite funny, but I worked with somebody who was Italian, and he would always come out and be very direct. And I had I have a little scar on my face, and when it happened, he goes, "What happened to you?" And he would just come out and say it. Whereas, I found that my NAM North American colleagues would be more reserved, and they wouldn't come out and they would say it, right? So,
Yeah.
but it formed different relationships with people. And I think those relationships exist culturally across the board, but I notice them more so because they know more about me than most.
That is so beautiful. I love what you said because in a way our differences connect us. We
For
might,
sure.
yeah, we might not speak the same language in quotation mark, grew up with the same language in the same culture as you mentioned, someone in Italy, but we could connect on the human side that I have a I have a great intention to care about you, and that is why I'm asking
What happened to my face?
about what happened.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so it's, and you understand that that person has good intentions. So again, it's what connects us is that we underlyingly we know that that person has good intentions, that it's not out to get me and to harm me.
Right. And sometimes in at work we think, people are out to get us, but once you've had authentic conversations with them, you realize, no, they're not. They're just trying to be helpful, or caring as, by asking those questions. Yeah.
Yes, yes. You said something that got my curiosity, that people respond differently, and through their different responses they almost like they break down, you collectively, you together, you break down the biases and the judgments that could, hmm, what's the word, put up barriers between leaders and employees and teammates and leaders between the people that you work with, and then almost like prevent you from becoming friends, becoming partners where you work, to work towards something and collaborate. So I really just want to take a minute and applaud that courage that you go into these one-on-ones with.
It's really funny that, and I appreciate your saying that. It's really funny that you might think you're able to hide your differences, but people already have picked up on it. And by bringing it all to the surface, and as you said, mentioning the elephant in the room early on, it breaks down tons of barriers for you that you didn't know, um, you thought you had hit very well, and you didn't know was more apparent than they actually are, and can be perceived negatively. So for me, the interrupting, because I do interrupt, right, is perceived negatively, and it depends on whether my ADHD is managed that day or whether it's not. The other things I do is I'm very, very direct, and it's not intentional, but if I see something that, they say, see something, say something. I'm the one to say something, right? So, I bring it all out. And that, when people know that it's not me trying to show them up, but me trying to help them, they look at it completely differently than, if they didn't know me. But I do end up in situations where people don't know me and they make assumptions. Usually they'll share it with somebody else who knows me and would say, "Oh, you don't understand. This is Karyn, and this is what she's about." And it really does help to have a lot of people advocating for me.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, advocate for you and having allies. I call them allyship, building
Yes,
allyships.
allyship's so
Where
important.
where as you said, that's a great example, that somebody hears something about you and maybe you're not in the room and they're talking about you, and somebody can almost, yeah, it's speak the truth, bring in the truth about you, and bring in your intention for you.
And because I haven't hidden it, right, or try to hide it anymore. People feel comfortable talking about it. They don't feel like they're talking, specifically
Oh,
behind
yes.
her back. They feel like I am definitely advocating and being her ally by letting this person know. And I'm okay with that. And sometimes people come to me and they say, oh, I may have come across wrong in that meeting because I did not know that, that is who you are. And I just want to apologize to you. And I was like, but you don't need to apologize to me. I feel like I need to apologize. But, it really makes for some good friendships. And that's what I value about my employer. I do get exposed to a lot of people, and they're very much like my family because of the fact that we can share authentic, conversations.
And isn't that what we all want during our work hours?
Yeah, and we
Just
don't always get it, right? We spend a lot of hours at work. So how do we get it? And I always say to people, be the person who steps up and raises your hand first to, what is the saying? Be the change you want to be in the world,
mm,
right? So
yeah.
be that person. You want authenticity and transparency, you be it first, and if somebody says, "Oh, I don't want to know about this," um, I haven't really experienced that. So if you perceive that somebody will say, I don't really want to know about this, it's just your perception. It's not really what happens.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing because we have that fear that people gonna wanna they're gonna reject us and they're gonna reject what we want to say. But your experience is no, people are so much kinder than we think about them.
For sure, for sure. People want to help you succeed. They don't want to see you fail.
Hmm. Yes.
Especially if you're junior, and or even if you're senior and you're trying to navigate a difficult situations, they definitely don't want to see you fail.
So Karen, I'm curious, let's shift a little bit. Tell me what surprised you in this transition.
And moving to a large corporation.
Hmm.
So with ADHD, I don't like to do one thing for too long, right? So that's why I'm a project manager and a process engineer, because a project has a beginning and an end, right? And being in city, in this large corporation, people would have thought, oh yeah, you're going to work in the same job for 10 years. And
Mm.
that's the glory of being in a big corporation, that I've held 7 different roles in 5 years, right? Some of them for shorter periods than others. And I really like that because it works very well with the way my mind works. And I have jumped around for everything from, you know, building automation anywhere robots that scheduled interviews, to now I'm head of employee experience on the training floors. So and in between, I've, run innovation projects and had an opportunity to work in finance and worked in human resource shared services with Workday setting up and all over. And, that environment works so well for me. Right now, I'm about to work on an AI project. So super excited about what we're doing in that space.
Did you know that you can move and make your work interesting before you joined City, or was that a
No,
surprise?
that was the surprise. So I actually joined City as on a contract. And I wouldn't say I joined City. So I was a contractor at City for 3 months before I transitioned to full-time employee. And that's when I joined just to build a bot. I had a saying, because I have an uncle who worked at City for a long time, that I never really wanted to be at City because it was a boring bank. Who wanted to be a boring banker?
Mm,
It's
I see.
nothing, that environment is nothing but boring. Working in a large corporation, any large corporation, is not boring. You have an opportunity to grow and learn, and yeah, it's just it's a good place for me to be.
I love that you tried it out and almost experienced it over this 3 months for yourself, and then okay, I'll I'll jump
And
in.
and 5 years later, sometimes I surprise myself. I'm like, I'm still here. Like, and what have I done? And I've gone like this zigzag part, path, but really, really like that I'm able to um use my brain in so many different ways in one environment.
So if you could summarize what you have learned about yourself, what maybe new mindset you had to adopt, or what you discovered that you didn't know over this 5 years, what would those be?
Well, I have a mindset for learning. I like to learn, and as I mentioned earlier, I like to teach. So I knew that I love to learn. But being so transparent is is actually easier than other and than people think it is. And that's something that I learned along the way, right? So being able to share who you are and being an authentic person is actually much easier than trying to put on a facade.
Wait, how did you learn that? Because I'm that, that's more.
How did I learn that? Well, by, by again, trying to hide it in a corporate setting and be somebody that I wasn't was failing for me. It was coming across the wrong way, and I didn't want that. I didn't just go in there and start, doing tons of coffee chats. I had to get around to making that work the way it should.
What were some signs that there were the red flags showing up as of, okay, this is not working, and the
Well,
other side of not showing up who you are and hiding it?
the feedback that came across, like,
Mhm.
you're very direct. One boss said to me, why don't you go say things with flowers? And I was like, what does that mean? Say things with flowers? Like, you mean be softer? Like, is that what you're trying to say to me? Or they, you know, it was kind of, you know, the feedback that I received, that I was being perceived the wrong way, and nobody wants to be perceived negatively. I certainly didn't.
Yeah.
Um, and I was in a new environment, and with dealing with things like a workday implementation for payroll, it's a difficult process, and I didn't want people to not participate. You can't be a project manager with people who don't want to participate in your project. So the feedback made me change the way I worked.
Mm, thank you for bringing feedback in, because I know almost from the beginning people have a hmm, a negative relationship with feedback.
I know, and my first manager at City used to say, feedback is a gift. Feedback is a gift. Feedback is a gift. So you have
But
to know
seeing
to
it
how
as
to
a
take
gift,
it.
I think that's that evolution that we have to go through ourselves.
Of course, but when somebody gives you feedback, that's their perception that they're sharing with you, right? It may not be true, it may be true, right? How do you navigate their perception? That becomes, your job, not theirs.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely not the easiest thing to do. I have really enjoyed growing in my environment. I think I grow every single day. It gives me a chance to just be a better leader. The people who work with me, I don't say for me, but with me, definitely understand me a lot better because I share some of these challenges that I face, and they would tell you they'll probably never never stop working with me because of the fact that I can be that boss that is humanistic.
Well, I also say you have to give first what you want to get. So if you
Right.
want to be understood, you have to give that. And it sounds like you are. So I'd say, yeah, I would want to stay with you and work with you in the team, because you are giving me the understanding of who I am before I can give it to you.
But Andrea, I actually did that as my dissertation. While I was at City, I was finishing my doctorate degree, and in there it was, how does leadership style influence productivity and longevity. So it's also a study I did about it. So I try very much to be the type of leader that brings their team along with them.
Great. As I said, the engineer brings the data in and the analysis. So
For sure, yes, for sure. I mean, I think I love the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, that you are doing the engineer whisperer, and I have, um, my father was a civil and mechanical engineer, so it was kind of cool that I became a process engineer because I wasn't as smart to become a civil or mechanical engineer, and then my nephew is a aerospace engineer and a mechanical engineer, and so, I have chemical engineers and all kinds of engineers in my family. So the mindset never leaves you.
and I'm happy to hear that you are leveraging it. Now, Karen, for closing, I'm curious, what is a mindset that you're working on maybe right now as your, because you love to learn, you love to teach, you love to grow. So what is something that you're stretching yourself now and growing into by choice?
It's this podcast is definitely a stretch for me. This is I will be totally transparent. This is my second podcast, and I struggle with um, having discussions on the spot like this. It is a little bit of a struggle for me, making sure that I'm saying the right thing or doing the right thing. So you've made it extremely comfortable, Andrea, and that is why I'm doing this podcast. But for a long time, I did not put myself out there in such a public setting to talk about, ADHD, neurodiversity, and the impact that it has on people and how to navigate some of your situations at work. So thank you for having me. That's a big step in my own journey right now.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying yes, for being here, and for I think what we have in common is the belief that we can make an impact, and together we can make a bigger impact than alone. And yes, I am so grateful that you're here and you're sharing, and my intention was to give you the mic, literally and figuratively, to inspire others, because you inspired me once I got to know you and then we had a call. So
Thank you so much for that. I'm glad that I can be an inspiration to others, and the intention is to share my own experiences, sometimes the bumps that I faced and the journey I've navigated to be able to help others. Really important.
yes, I believe in that too. And on that note, I would like to give you back the mic. Close us out. What would you like to leave us with?
Um, Always be who you are, and don't be afraid to share who you are, and be the first to, stand up and step up if you're feeling in an uncomfortable situation. That's it.
Step up, use your voice, and do little scary things like get on a podcast like you did today. Step out of your comfort zone so that you continue to grow. Well, Karen, thank you very much for being here. It's been an honor. I really appreciate your time and your kindness today.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.